Hello everyone. This is the first of what will be a series of videos on Attack on Titan, where we'll be discussing everything from start to finish. Originally, this was supposed to be one massive video, but on account of it being too massive, I've decided to release it in parts. How we'll be going about it, what does everything even mean, you'll understand through the course of this video. This is just to say thank you for starting along the journey. See you on the other side. In April of 2013, Attack on Titan aired its first season, immediately taking the world by storm. This series transcended the limits of what was believed to be popular at the time, going on to penetrate even mainstream audiences and eventually defining a new generation of anime fans. Attack on Titan wasn't just a classic, it was an instant classic. And as for how it was able to achieve this explosive shot to fame so quickly, honestly, much of it came down to the pure hype it delivered. Just describing the show's premise got your blood pumping. 100 years ago, humanity was brought to the brink of extinction. The surviving populace retreated into these walls and have remained there in peace until the big naked monsters that forced them there have attacked again. Now humanity is locked in a fight for survival, do or die. It was epic, it was insane, and it was simple. If you take a look at some of the discourse from back then, you'll see that the most common criticism against the show at the time was how simple and one note the series and its characters seemed to be. Looking back on it now, boy were we wrong. Right from the beginning of season 1, the seeds of a much bigger and more intricate story had already been planted, and how carefully this unfolds and evolves is truly a sight to behold. Initially, the lines are clear. The military fighting for humanity are our heroes, and the mindless titans the enemy. But right at the end of the season, it's revealed that one of these titans is actually a fellow trainee and comrade. But she's a traitor, so it's fine. Season 2 rolls around 4 years later, and it's revealed that all titans are in fact humans. But they're no longer human, so it's fine. Season 3 directly pits human against human, but these were corrupt military officials, so it's fine. Slowly but surely, each new season introduces with it an increasing level of moral ambiguity, while also spinning this complex web of varying philosophies. Until finally, everything coalesces in the basement reveal. Humanity never went extinct. The world is just at war, and we are all the same. This is where the bubble bursts, and in the final season, infighting occurs. Ideals clash, and the world continues to get grayer and grayer and grayer until finally we end up with this. For the longest time, I have wanted to make a video diving deep into every single aspect of this series. People, groups, themes, symbols, openings, endings, all of it. Now this would usually be a monumental task in its own right, but also, as we've just seen, Attack on Titan specifically has a lot of interlinked elements that are constantly building on themselves and on each other. So how can one bounce around all of these ideas while making it somewhat coherent? And that's where I got an idea. What if I made an all-encompassing graph that captures every idea, every character, every development, and how it all links together. And so I set on this task, and then I failed. But I did walk away with this. This diagram will serve as the framework for our journey. While it's not designed to tell the complete story in isolation, by using it, we will. It acts as a visual to keep us grounded as we bounce around different ideas, and it helps us compare and contrast different characters based around a single theme, which is actually how the show approaches it. Attack on Titan has a plethora of complex, multifaceted characters, but it handles them in a pretty cool way. If there's an arc where a certain theme comes into focus, all the characters relevant to that theme enter or re-enter the story, driving its exploration further. So, taking a note from that, each section of the video will be centered around a particular theme, and certain pairs or people most relevant to it will be shortlisted to explore it. And I think that's enough ground rules for now. All of what I said will make sense by the end anyway. So for now, as promised, let's begin to talk about everything. In the land of Marley stands the magnificent statue of Helios, the hero who 100 years ago slayed the devils of Eldia and forced them to retreat to the island of Paradis.
Heliosの勇姿を見事だった。勇ましく美しく傷一つない。まさにマーレの魂そのものだ。
This is the story fed to every child in Marley, and especially to the Eldians living in Marley, like Rainer Brown. Although the Eldians here have been forced into small internment zones and are heavily discriminated against, they're told that by becoming the warriors of Marley, not only will they grant their families special status, they'll also be celebrated as heroes, no less than Helios himself. So Rainer fully commits himself to it, achieves warrior status, and launches an attack on Paradis. But of course, on the other side aren't devils, but our own heroes from season 1. And so, this whole tiresome cycle repeats. Years later, an attack on Marley is launched, and another false hero rises. At the core of everything in Attack on Titan is this us versus them mentality, which we followed through from both sides now. It's the dehumanization that occurs when we divide the world into a binary us and them. They are the enemy, so any harm inflicted upon them is not only excusable, but it may even be justice.
Eren! お前は自分が何をしたか分かっているのか？
有害なケダモノを駆除した。たまたま人と格好が似ていただけのケダモノだ。
However, when the dust settles, you've got blood on your hands. As you can see, us versus them lies smack dab in the middle of this chart. It is the most basic, necessary foundation needed to build more complex ideas on. And while it is a destructive belief that everyone needs to be aware of, the world is a big place, and there are those that vehemently believe in it, those who come to know better, and even the ones whose arcs aren't directly tied to it will still be affected by it. So we've established us versus them as a dangerous mindset, but the story of Helios shine light on something more.
見事だった。勇ましく美しく傷一つない。まさにマーレの魂そのものだ。
ええ、まさしく。銅像の中は空洞ですし。
Helios is a carefully constructed, empty lie. Propaganda. Propaganda is everywhere in Attack on Titan, right from the get-go, and the anime adaptation in particular seemed to not only wish to depict it, but also to involve us in it. I can point you to the over-the-top speeches and action spectacles, the unifying symbols, mottos and salutes, but its best contributions by far were the openings. Attack on Titan openings are full-on national anthems, designed to sweep you away, instilling within you a sense of national pride. For 20 minutes, you witness humanity's slaughter at the hands of the Titans. But as soon as the next episode opens with "They are the prey and we are the hunters," suddenly all that fades away. The openings capture all of the show's propaganda in miniature. Take a closer look and you'll notice how they ever so slightly twist the narrative. The scouts are often portrayed on equal footing with the Titans, equally as intimidating and basked in an incredible white light. When the battle begins, the Titans are made to look like cattle, with the soldiers swooping in to execute them. What all this is in service of is right there in the name of this opening, Guren no Yumiya, or Crimson Bow and Arrow. Bow and arrow obviously refers to the soldiers as weapons, but with crimson being the color of blood. Essentially, it's a call for them to die as human weapons. Other openings, like the one based on the military's motto, or dedicate your hearts, calls for the same thing, put down your lives. So behind all the cool gears and poses we wish to emulate is a much darker meaning. By painting over reality like this, the actual truth can be shown in plain sight, but our minds will gloss over it. The first battle at Trost was a joke. The Colossal hits them with a surprise attack. The second of the 3 walls fall, their best soldiers are absent, and so they send new recruits to deal with it. The situation is as bleak as it can get. However, at that point, it's the recruits themselves who pull the wool over their own eyes all the way until they're literally in the jaws of the Titans. The larger point here is, as dangerous as the us versus them mindset is, there is an active attempt being made to indoctrinate people into it. Because, at the end of the day, it does create obedient followers. And as long as that remains true, instead of teaching kids proper values, these groups will continue to feed that very mindset. In the real world, what's right doesn't necessarily align with the politics. But to simply call what they're doing brainwashing isn't the full story. There's another reason as to why these individuals are so susceptible to them. In the island of Paradis is a religious group called the Church of the Walls. These are wall worshippers who believe the walls to be gifts from God and therefore sacred. Before the first attack on Shiganshina, we see a pastor preaching to the citizens but with not a lot of attention being paid to him. However, fast forward to just 5 years after the attack, and this is now a massive group with a large say in state decisions.
奴は神の英知である壁を欺き
あれはウォール教の5年前は誰も相手にしてなかったのに偉くなったもんだな。彼らのせいで壁上を武装することさえ時間がかかったんだ。
It seems as though the attack in Shiganshina had opened people's eyes as the survivors flooded in to be accepted by the Church of the Walls. At the brink of extinction, humanity returned to faith. It's a beautiful thought, but humanity also turned to all these other groups. Ultimately, people needed answers. People needed hope. People were afraid. People were angry. Everyone had what we can broadly define as desires and fears, and these groups swooped in to capitalize on that. At the start of the series, there's a chapter about the 104th Training Corps' first day in the military, where instructor Shadis asks each of them why they decided to join in the first place. And not only is this a clever way of introducing us to the cast, it also serves to reveal the specific desires and fears that led them there. Eren, Reiner, and Connie all wish to be heroes. Connie by becoming a decorated soldier and making his mother proud, Rainer by saving the world and giving his mother a better life, and Eren by vanquishing the enemies who killed his mother. Eren is also motivated by revenge. Mikasa doesn't hold such high aspirations but simply wants to protect her home. Eren too shares that fierce level of loyalty with her. Jean and Hitch seek comfort by joining the interior military police, while Armin and Eren again wish to explore the outside world, etc., etc. A large variety of reasons, all seemingly met under the umbrella of the military. I suppose the keywords here are selective perception. People have a tendency to reject anything that doesn't fit their own worldview because they so desperately want to believe in whatever they believe in. So all of these people are susceptible, ripe for the taking. All the system needs to do is feed that belief and their own minds will do the rest. But if Paradis military can be accused of positioning itself at the center of those needs, Marley's military can be accused of outright creating them. Marley's military is the worst example of all the propaganda we've seen. On top of all of the above, they instill fear by painting the Eldians in Paradis as devils and manufacture a desire by forcing their Eldians into internment camps where they are to remain for the rest of their lives, dreaming about the outside world. The solution to both, which coincidentally only they themselves can offer, is to join their cause. This speaks to the danger these groups are capable of at their worst, growing so strong that they can bend everyone to their will, even the ones who don't adhere to its rhetoric. As the story's focus shifted from Paradis to Marley, an almost complete parallel of this scene is presented to us, except this time with Marley's troops returning to their families after the war. And we can see that while many families are celebrating their victory and heroic triumphs, the Grice family only expresses relief. Falco and Colt's uncle, Grice, was a former restorationist, conspiring against the kingdom of Marley. His capture and subsequent execution brought shame and signaled more for the Grice family. So his two nephews had to become warrior candidates to save face.
発言を訂正させてください。戦士候補生ファルコ・グライスは己の一族を悪しきユミルの地から解放するべくこの地を生涯マーレに捧げます。名誉マーレ人として栄誉と誇りを授かり祖国マーレの忠誠を存分に示す権利が得られることと存じます。
The Grice family are forced into this political game, and they definitely are not the only ones. In the end, what we have is a toxic relationship between those desperate for answers and those who claim to have them. And with the way they come together, what's born out of that is that very dangerous mindset. However, if you thought this was just going to be a rant on how awful the system is, you're half right. This is where I'll reveal to you what this chart is actually about and what this story is actually about. Attack on Titan presents us with a world that is vast, complicated, and fundamentally flawed. Injustice and cruelty seem to almost be ingrained within life itself. One look at the walls tells you that those further within the walls are naturally in a better position than the ones close to the end of it. That is an obvious, indisputable fact. And as much as we'd like to fight that, or perhaps even blame someone for this, it is still just one example of life's inequity. And so, to deal with the inherent cruelty of the world, various philosophies have risen up, each claiming to know the path beyond it to this place that we can only articulate as freedom. In its quest to find freedom, Attack on Titan explores each and every single one of these philosophies, without bias, even the most reprehensible ones, and even the most destructive ones. So to simply dismiss this whole dynamic as just insidious groups preying on people's weaknesses wouldn't be the full story. With the earlier discussion of the walls, another complication arises. As explained at the end of chapter 2, due to the large circumference of the walls, it would be near impossible to deal with all of the Titans in the event of a breach. Therefore, these small districts that jut outside the walls were built to focus the Titans' attention and concentrate them into one spot. This then allows the military to better consolidate its forces. However, the bait needed to lure these Titans to these towns are living, breathing people. So how does the ruling monarchy convince its people to reside there? Through propaganda. This is the philosophy of the military, how it deals with the cruelty of the world and how it manages situations of crisis. With how much the story evolves, it can be forgotten just how terrifying the situation was in the beginning. Lacking funds or information or resources, it took tens of hundreds of lives to maybe advance one step. Humanity needed soldiers who obeyed orders without question and at the drop of a hat. Season 1 wasn't just about having us experience propaganda firsthand to have it challenged later on, it also genuinely paid respect to this philosophy. There are anime-only scenes dedicated to these soldiers and their families. And there's almost a whole episode dedicated to what happens when soldiers decide to take matters into their own hands. After the female Titan's onslaught, the Survey Corps tried to recover as many bodies for their families as possible, until the commander Erwin makes the decision to declare the rest MIA.
納得いきませんエレヴィン団長
Two soldiers protest until the captain Levi comes and shuts them down.
死亡を確認したならそれで十分だろう。遺体があろうがなかろうが死亡は死亡だ。
これは決定事項だ。諦める。
お二人には人間らしい気持ちというものがないのですか
With that, the two decide to disregard the orders anyway, but what that results in is another scramble for escape.
ダメだ追いつけれる
And in an ironic twist of fate, they're forced to dispose of the bodies they already had.
いいぞそのまま進めリヴァイ兵長自分は
これが奴らの生きた証だ。俺にとってはな。
There's a lot that this episode establishes. That the authority figures aren't necessarily the heartless devils they're made out to be, that perhaps these figures do possess a wisdom the people can't grasp as of yet, and how questioning those decisions might actually doom the whole community. This whole culture was built out of necessity. And once you begin to orient your thinking that way, the appeal of these groups begin to settle in. Let's not forget that these systems are also quite beneficial for the individuals within it. Released from the burden of responsibility and welcomed into a tight-knit community, these individuals need only concern themselves with devoting their hearts to their tasks in blissful ignorance. The idea of being part of one unit and having your death being a stepping stone honored by your fellow troops, or the idea of putting your body and soul into something based on faith and faith alone, is an undoubtedly beautiful one. As such, they're freed from the fear and doubts of any one man. Many of them die in peace with the belief that they contributed to humanity's cause. With all of this in view, we finally arrive at the two main characters for this section, as well as the strongest arguments in favor of blissful ignorance. Sanas of the Interior Military Police, and this guy, Pastor Nick. Sanas was a military man, and Pastor Nick was a higher up in the Church of the Walls. But both served the same person and his ideology. Sanas referred to him as his king, and Nick believed he carried the will of God. Both men knew that this person had all the answers for what lied beyond the walls. Answers men died for, but they willingly chose to remain in ignorance and spread that ignorance. Episode 25's intermission recounts the story of a miner who wished to live the comfier life in the inner walls. Life in Wall Sina would be pretty nice. The next few days he spent trying to find the optimal spot. for digging and for secrecy. When he finally found it, he spent the whole day digging, only taking short breaks for rest and water. He made a lot of progress, but would have to come back another day. For the next 20 years, without missing a day, the miner continued to dig into the earth. During that time, he learned to dig deeper, more quickly, and more efficiently than anyone else. The miner was determined to breach the walls. By this point, it was obsession. Any thought of digging his way to an easy life within Walsina had long been forgotten. He simply wanted to conquer the walls. Finally, one day, he struck something that felt like hard rock. Confused, the miner struck it with all his strength, and the shovel shattered. The miner could go no further. Disillusioned, the miner later confided in his close friend, telling him everything, ending his story with the words, "What exactly are the walls?" His friend, fearful of the military police, shuts him down. "Does it matter? Just keep on living here as you always have. Isn't that enough?" The miner accepts his lot in life and leaves. Except he never returned the next day or the one after that. His friend went looking for him but couldn't find him. Worried, he eventually told the garrison everything, and they sent a large search party after him, but even they were never able to find him. And funny enough, a few days later, that friend too disappeared. This is all the information disclosed to us. What happened to the miner? We can only speculate. Did he actually make it to Walsina? That's not possible, because we know that in truth the wall is lined with titans, and the rock that shattered his shovel was likely their crystallization. He was never gonna make it past. Maybe he found another way inside, struck a deal with some bigwig. Well, apart from that being very unlikely and pretty convenient, the miner did seem to have genuinely given up on ever getting there. Plus, at that point, he hardly even cared about that, only wanting to know what's in the wall. No. The biggest clue is that the friend also vanished. The same friend the miner had confided all his secrets with. The only other mention of the miner in the story reveals that a journalist who looked into this story soon met the same fate as the other two. So what if the interior military police killed the miner and hid the truth? Not because he tried to sneak in, but because of the much larger transgression that he knew too much. This event took place in the year 784, 61 years before the first wall fell. In the 100 years of the wall existing, there are likely countless similar stories of people stumbling onto information they shouldn't have and promptly being snuffed out by the military police. That will is now being carried on by Sanas, who snuffed out many more. As for why, it's to keep the peace. It's revealed that Pastor Nick also knew that there were titans inside the walls, which would explain why the church was so vehemently against arming the walls. So something that initially felt backwards actually had a much deeper meaning attached to it.
Soろそろ話してもらいましょうか。なぜ壁の中に巨人がいるんですか。そしてなぜあなた方はそれを黙っていたんですか。
Despite the pressures put on them, both Sanas and Nick were adamant in their choices and their devotion shown in their will to die for it.
今だ 私を殺して学ぶがいい。我々は必ず使命を全うする。今この手を離せ。
One's willingness to die for something is often regarded as the highest form of conviction, but in reality, death is too easy. There's no lesson in it. No, they had to reflect on their arrogance.
ここか?
Both Sanas and Nick are made to experience the results of their choices.
おい止まるな。そりゃこうなるに決まってる。壁が破壊されちまってんだから、あれがお前らが切り捨てようとしてる顔だ。住処を失った人の表情がよく拝めるな。
There's an added layer of tragedy here because even though their arcs run parallel to each other, this moment happens in season 2 and this moment happens in season 3. Between that time, Sanas tortured and killed Pastor Nick, specifically because his will started shaking after this moment. Once the Survey Corps puts Sanas through that same torture, he relives not just the physical but also the mental anguish that Nick went through. Just like Nick, he begins to lose that self-righteousness.
こんなに痛かったんだね。
However, also like Nick, he arrives at the same conclusion.
私は話せない。
俺たちのやってきたことは間違ってないと。
Both men, even after facing the consequences of their actions, still chose the same path. For peace? Sure, but more so it was to maintain this simple paradise, with its simple goals and dreams that lie just beyond the horizon. Rather than a philosophy of the ignorant, this is the philosophy to be ignorant. And as the Survey Corps begin to usurp them, Sanas leaves Hanji with the haunting words,
役を降りても誰かがすぐに代わりを演じ始める。こういう役には多分順番がある。頑張れよ、ハンジ。
and his warning would soon come to pass. In season 3's return to Shiganshina arc, the arc where everything is revealed, the opening and ending both take a nostalgic turn. The opening directly calls back to all of its previous militaristic songs as tribute. And the ending literally plays a highlight reel of the previous seasons with lyrics that bid goodbye to those times. They're both farewells, but a farewell to what? Most of the characters make it out alive and even spend the next few years together, so they aren't alluding to any deaths or separation, but in fact to the loss of their own ignorance. Because once they found out the truth in the basement, they couldn't go back. And what followed was a much bloodier and brutal world. Well, this concludes for now our first section of the chart, the philosophy of ignorance. The simplest philosophy of submitting all of your thinking and adhering completely to a strictly laid out belief system. It's wrong in many ways, but to truly combat it, we need to answer the questions it raises regarding necessary evil and is ignorance bliss or not. Till then, it does seem like a pretty sweet deal. Of course, Eren Yeager would disagree.